city of dreams. And I'm a big dreamer.
Hello everyone, Luke here from Outside Xtra and with Jane from Outside Xbox. We just got out of seeing Cyberpunk 2077 at E3 2018. We got an hour-long gameplay demo that showed off loads of stuff about the game. Unfortunately though, we can't really show very much of it at all to you guys here because it's all top secret still for now, so we're going to do everything we can to describe it.
We're going to paint a picture with our words.
A vivid picture. But what really struck me as we were watching that gameplay demo was how even though it involves a lot of cars and guns and sci-fi stuff, this is all the way to its core an RPG, and here are the RPG things that you'll find in Cyberpunk. So first, Jane, it's all stats based, right?
Well, very much so, because it is an RPG. It's not a shooter in a cyberpunk costume.
Yes.
And Cyberpunk is a tabletop role-playing game that's based on all the stats, based on the numbers. You know, you play D&D, you know.
Yes.
So
it's
absolutely,
heavy numbers.
its roots, its DNA is numbers-based, is stats-based, is pure RPG. Don't be fooled by that first-person perspective, which actually you haven't seen yet because it's not in any of the gameplay available.
Oh yeah, FYI,
but it is
it's in first
person.
person. So how you fare in encounters with enemies is all going to come down to how strong you are, what your stats are, what your level is, what their level is. So it's something that I think you're always going to have in mind as you're playing through, is basically what your numbers are and can you get them up just a little bit higher, and how do you go about that? That's classic sort of RPG mindset.
At the same time, there is obviously the element of skill and dexterity and traversal, because you will be whipping around and doing cool slides in slow motion. So it's a marrying of that role-playing game, stats-based performance with how well can you aim at stuff and shoot things.
You can tell that it's from the people who did The Witcher 3, because that was a prime example of marrying what is essentially an action game with something that is a very deep and very classic RPG.
They have such a pedigree. I cannot fault that demo, and it was so self-assured, so confident, and rightly so. I admire that. I admire that very much. I'm less admire it, and I'm just very jealous of the people at CG Projekt Red, because they are so damn good at what they do.
Oh, to be that talented.
Oh, to be that talented.
Through the game, you have attributes. At the beginning, you are asked to put points into them. It's a real classic kind of, here are your things, like in Fallout, for example, where you're
like
asked
your
to...
special system.
Like your special system. Those attributes are strength, constitution, there's reflexes in there as well, intelligence,
classic,
tech, and the best one of all, cool, which we sort of guess is going to work a little bit like charisma does in most RPGs, you know.
How persuasive you are, whether you can like charm, intimidate, just get people to do what you want by talking at them, which is my favourite way of getting through a role-playing game.
So numbers are one thing, but there is another very, very RPG thing that you'll find right at the beginning of Cyberpunk, isn't there, Jane?
Indeed.
And that is a glorious character customization screen.
Can't wait to get in there.
Oh yeah.
Slide those sliders around.
Going to be adjusting
those
those cheekbones.
Up in those coloured wheels.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be like brow height. No, doesn't seem to be making any visible difference.
You never want to make the cheekbones too high. It looks weird.
I know.
It doesn't look beautiful. It looks weird if you go too high in a
The
character
other thing is,
creator.
I often make something that looks great in the character creator, and then as soon as they're animated, the cheekbones are flying all over the place.
I find you never want to go too far from the sort of centre.
Yes.
Because the animation will have been calibrated for a sort of an averaging in the middle.
Yes.
Maybe CD Projekt Red have cracked it, and you can do whatever the heck you want.
It's possible, but hey, you know, a lot of people like to make a really, really odd-looking character.
Mike, for instance.
And his opponent, from parts unknown.
So you're going to have that option. We only got to see a very little bit of the character customization, but some things that we know are in there are, number one, your gender. You can choose to be male or female. There's things like your eye augmentation, which I believe is going to affect the colour that your eyes glow. There's tattoos, haircuts, so you can get really, really granular. And I think that's really important for an RPG, because you end up emotionally invested right from the beginning in a character you've built, right?
Yeah, it's not all superficial and shallow. They brought up the point, and it hadn't occurred to me to make this connection, but the cyberpunk philosophy, if you like, is about controlling who you are and what you are.
In a world where people have lost control of their personal identity because of technology.
Yeah, where mega corporations run everything and organised crime runs amok. You reassert yourself and reassert your control by, at the very least, controlling exactly, you know, what your body looks like and what your face looks like and how you dress and what implants you have. And that gels so nicely with the concept of
Yeah.
custom creating your character in a character creator and then playing the way you like and then modifying yourself the way you like.
It's cool that it's going to hit that theme straight away.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting in terms of role-playing is, in Mass Effect, how you can choose a little bit about your backstory. So you're going to be able to do that. We saw there were 3 options. It might be in the final game there were more or fewer, but what we saw involved choosing your childhood hero, and then a key event in your life. You could choose a different one. And then the third one is the reason that you are in Night City, which is the city in which Cyberpunk is set. One example I saw there was like your ex is in town or something like that. So
yeah.
I don't know how much those are going to really play into the eventual plot. In Mass Effect, they don't really affect anything, do they?
They affect, and I think it'll be somewhat similar, if I had to guess, for Cyberpunk. It affects dialogue. So I think it will colour conversations that you have rather than setting you up for a completely different path and a completely different outcome. Because obviously this is a bit of flavour that you choose very early on.
As you were saying before, the greater function that it serves is immediately you're role-playing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, bring it back to D&D and to that kind of pen and paper-based tabletop RPG. You start by creating your character and thinking about where they come from, like who they are as a person, what their story is, not just what their numbers are.
Are you one of those people, Jane, who when they're playing like Dragon Age or Skyrim or something, do you read all the books?
I don't read all the text. I like to think that I immerse myself in a world, but I don't think it's fully immersive to pick up and read everything you find, because
you don't do that in real life.
Exactly. If I were role-playing in Dragon Age Inquisition, the world's about to end. I don't think I'd have time to pick up and read every single book I find lying around the old library.
So you don't read the books because you're actually too deep in.
I'm too immersed.
You're too immersed, if anything.
If you're asking me whether I dig deep into lore, then yes, absolutely. If it's a world I care about, I want to know everything about it.
What we do know from our demo is that in Cyberpunk 2077, when you pick up a new item, if you go into the inspector view, which is something that lets you do it rotates a 3D holographic model of the item, but that also gives you a sort of codex entry on what that item is. So I think that's where the lore's going to come from. If you want to read it when you pick something up, you can get a bit of an entry on that. The world of Cyberpunk is so interesting. You kind of want to know, how did society end up like this? Like, how did it go so wrong?
Yeah.
Or so right if you're someone who's really invested in glowing collars.
If you really want to take your face off and replace it with headlamps.
I think I'm going to be reading quite a lot of the lore, because I think that's where we'll be picking up sort of, oh, look, here's a little bit of information on the 2057 Accord of...
You're probably right. You're probably very
yeah.
right. But I think it's more deftly and enjoyably done. In other ways we saw in the demo, for instance, your Ripper Doc, the guy who actually fits you with all your modifications, he's watching a boxing match on television, and if you go over and hang out near him, he's talking about how boxers these days, they all have these skull thickening implants so they can absorb more impact.
Nice.
And so there's that world building, and then there's that kind of rich texture that makes a world really believable. So delicious when it's fed to you in that natural way, and you feel smarter for having absorbed some element of the world's fiction in that kind of eavesdropping way.
Absolutely. So I'm fearful of making this comparison because I know how hackneyed it is to do.
Caveat. What's it going to be?
Did it seem a little bit Dark Souls to you?
No!
No.
Sorry. No.
In the way that you didn't really choose a class.
Okay.
Particularly.
No, you don't choose a class at all, not formally, not at the beginning of the game.
No, not at the beginning of the game, like some RPGs, but you do trend towards a build, and that's kind of how it works in Dark Souls. You sort of, you trend towards a particular style of playing.
Okay.
And then by the end of the game, you're very invested in those few skills and those few weapons.
I'm going to let you have it.
Yes. So in the gameplay, the build was this sort of extremely fast-moving, high-tech, super augmented character.
Cyborg ninja, I think was the way they put it.
Yeah, like a cyborg ninja. You could run along walls using creepy mantis claws.
You could do like an aerial assassination with your creepy mantis claws.
You could do all that kind of thing, but we were told that if you want, you can go through the game in a completely different way. You can go through it just as someone who's such a great hacker, such a skilled hacker, that they never have to really get involved in much combat at all.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting. And the other thing that I like about that is a real top RPG genre thing, is that I think it'll make it really replayable.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you could just as easily compare it to The Witcher 3, for instance. And I know people who play through that with different builds, like, oh, I've just completed The Witcher 3, but now I want to play it with a poison build.
Yeah.
For something that's a bit more like technical or a bit more challenging. And like you say, although you're not formally picking your build at the beginning of the game. In a menu, you might go into it saying, I really want to roleplay this character as a cyborg ninja or as an elite hacker, or just as like a super cool guy who only has cool points and somehow talks his way out of trouble. I don't know.
Assuming that the game actually turns out to be good, I like the idea that you'll finish it and then be like, I'm just going to go through it again and do everything completely differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So based on what we've seen, it doesn't look like there's any kind of hardcore RPG armor system thing, like you're not going to be getting different clothes.
Your armor's on the inside, I would assume. You're going to be getting your enhancements through titanium skeletons, adamantium deals and whatnot.
That's right. Like every good RPG has customizable outfits. So
many good RPGs have customizable outfits.
I know in Dragon Age you like to dress your squad up in like matching fabrics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do enjoy that very much. I do.
One thing we did see in this gameplay demo was that the character went to the cupboard in their horrible little Blade Runner cube flat that they live in.
I like that Blade Runner cube flat. It's cool.
It's
got a vending machine in it.
It's really bleak.
Who doesn't want an apartment with a vending machine in it? I thought that was a nice little bit of...
bleak.
Cool. I thought it was a nice little bit of storytelling that the mega corporations have taken over to the point where you have a vending machine in your apartment, presumably fitted by the mega corporation, so they can sell you things directly into your home. And you're like, I need a can of a drink, and oh, here it is from the vending machine. In fact, I think they do something like that in The Fifth Element. Doesn't he like buy cigarettes, or he extracts a cigarette from like a slot in the wall?
So it's definitely drawing on that kind of stuff. But we saw a character go to the cupboard and they were picking out a jacket, and one of them gave them a boost to street cred, which isn't very much to go on, admittedly, but what it tells me is that clothing and items in the game aren't purely cosmetic. They are going to have statistical boosts associated with them.
I would be cautious to assume they do anything than alter your street cred, because that's what you have implants for.
Yeah, as you say, that's probably going to be down to your bionic stuff.
I don't feel like it's going to be, and now put on 5 different rings and bracelets, and now a different t-shirt, and now a different jacket. I think they're going to keep
now socket these gems in
I think they're going to keep it quite streamlined, because obviously you've got a lot going on with your augmentations. I don't think they're going to go for now pick every single item of your wardrobe as well. But I think the iconic item, I think the key signature piece of clothing, the garment, is going to be the jacket with the cool collar.
Wicked cool jacket.
Yeah.
So in the gameplay we saw, the developers played through a couple of different missions, and they obviously only played it through one way, but what was really, really clear from the amount of dialogue options and from also what we were being told, there are many, many ways that you could play through it. And that keys into that replayability, but also into that sort of very Mass Effect idea of creating your own stories. So theoretically, it seems that you could even play some missions, or dare I say it, who knows, even the whole game in a non-violent way.
Feasible? Oh, it's not like you can play Mass Effect in a non-violent way.
No, but there are games you can finish in a non-lethally. Yeah.
Well, with stealth, perhaps? Is that what you mean? But you don't mean that. You mean like talking your way out of trouble.
Yeah, that's true. I did get the impression that the mission we saw, there might have been a way through it that involved no bloodshed at all.
The mission we saw got extremely complicated. There are sort of 3 different factions in play. Yeah. But yeah, you can betray people or you can stay true to your word. And I feel like there's going to be fighting at some point, but you probably get to choose which faction you fight and how many of them you fight.
Skyrim style.
Skyrim style.
Maybe you can ally yourself with a sort of a particular house or something.
And definitely a lot of different paths through levels, something like in Deus Ex, for example.
Oh yeah.
Where you can go through the vents if you can unlock the vents with an engineering skill, or if you can hack this door, you can go through this door and get out that way.
Another thing I liked was that at any point in a conversation you have the option to draw your weapon.
Yeah.
Which isn't always a good idea because you'll be against some very high level other characters and they'll be a lot stronger than you, and if you draw your weapon then they'll just kill you.
Yeah, but you've always got the option to petulantly just flip out and pull your weapon. Yeah.
What good is a modern RPG without some romancing, Jane?
It's a very good question, Luke.
It's no good at all, is it?
No.
No.
What we mean to say is that we sure do enjoy a romantic subplot in a role-playing game. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
The more customizable, the better. And we didn't get to see much of this in the demo, but it was strongly hinted at that this is going to be a game that has a lot of relationship options. In fact...
That's such a nice euphemistic way of putting it. I believe
yeah.
that the presenter was something like, it's an adult game with adult themes for adult people, or something like that, which generally means
Things
there'll
are
be
gonna get
sex scenes,
yeah.
there's going to be raunch,
Things are going to get
be
steamy.
nudity.
Well,
so
look,
don't worry if that's what you're in this for.
what we did see was a character waking up on a new day, and there was someone
On
who
a
they
nude
clearly
day.
on a nude day, and someone who they had clearly had a casual fling with was just leaving the
Yeah.
apartment. Obviously,
And she's like, close the door behind you. So,
Yeah.
it's
So
a different
obviously-
approach, not a very romantic approach.
it's more of a fling. I will be a little bit disappointed if in the game you can only have casual hookups and not dialogue tree heavy sort of romantic relationships with other characters in the game.
Well, sure. I mean, you're talking about the developers of The Witcher, and
Right.
the romances and the relationships are really key and really important to those games and to the people who play those games. So I would be shocked and appalled if they didn't create some characters that everyone's going to love and want to smooch.
Fingers crossed. Well, at the same show here at E3, we've had BioWare showing off Anthem, which it turns out is going to not have romanceable characters, which
What?
is shocking.
What?
Shocking
When
and
did this
dismaying.
happen, Luke?
Shocking
I'm
and
getting
dismaying.
I'm getting this live on camera. We've been so busy with E3 that I haven't been following the latest
This was the
BioWare
only,
news.
this was the only way I could think to deliver this crushing news.
He knew that I couldn't flip out and murder someone if I was on camera at the time.
Exactly.
So,
This is all being filmed. It's being streamed to the cops,
Yeah.
so people will know if something happens to me.
well, anyway, if you're after some romance, I would have good money on there being some in Cyberpunk.
So those are some of the ways that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be filled to the brim with all the things that you, as an RPG player, love and adore. I think it looks like a really cool game.
It was such an accomplished demo.
Yes.
I have so much faith that it is representative as well, because that's important.
Yeah.
I think it was a 50-minute demo, which is all but unheard of here at E3, where it's usually a very skinny little slice of gameplay.
And very controlled.
Yes.
And this was still controlled. It was still, they were still like going to a script.
It was a performance, but that's because they got to get people in and get people out and show them the entirety of the experience that they've decided to share. But there was so much of that experience.
Confident is the word you used, and I think it was the right one.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are not even cautiously optimistic, I'd say. Very optimistic. So don't break our hearts, CD Projekt Red. Give us
Please
the
don't.
single-player RPG that our hearts cry out for. Thank you for watching, guys. Let us know if you're excited for Cyberpunk in the comments. Let us know what you think about the game. And subscribe if you enjoyed this. And we will see you next time.